Owning any type of restoration business is demanding. Demanding of your time, your energy, and resources. And that's why we're here. This is Restoration Domination. If you're a contractor in water mitigation, mold remediation, biohazard cleanup, roofers, or public adjusters, you'll learn how to dominate using some of the techniques and strategies that our guests will share. We'll interview top industry insiders, movers and shakers, hustlers and hackers, and anyone dominating their industry. This is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, and dominate. And here's your host, Rico Garcia.
What is going on, Restoration Dominators? Today I'm bringing you a bonus episode coming to you live with these amazing individuals that represent our industry also well. Starting off with our very own Michelle Blevins. She's going to be my co-host for the day.
I am excited. Good luck to both of you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Rico and I already proved in class that it could get interesting.
It could really get interesting. Yeah, we've got some stories to share later on.
But not argumentative.
Never argumentative.
Okay. Not in the
that
least.
That would not be me.
And of course, everybody knows Chuck Violand and of course, Mr. Hall. And today I wanted to talk about, and I invited you to kind of, help us out. And number one, because I'm so appreciative of these kind of events, these high caliber events where we get high octave entrepreneurs. Michelle and I were talking, in the hall, and we're like, this is what the industry should really be about, is just bringing these high octave entrepreneurs. So, before we dive in, what were your thoughts on the event and having more of these type of events in the industry?
I think everybody knows that talks to me that this is one of my favorite events of the year. I'm pretty vocal on that. I love the opportunities to learn and the diversity of what's here and the level of speakers and presenters that you bring in. You're not just sitting in a classroom or a breakout session kind of bored for a day, right? Like, you're actually engaged and interacting. And I've made probably some of the best contacts that I've made in the industry through the summit over the years. I think this was the very first event that I attended maybe in the industry when I joined. I had no idea what I was doing and got lost in the middle of a cornfield driving here my first time. And it's been a great event, one of my favorites since.
That's awesome. So, Chuck, talk to us about the brainchild of what is the Executive Summit. Where did the idea come from? I know that today you were kind of sharing a little bit of that story.
Yep.
But for those that have never heard of the event, or they've heard about the event but they're not sure, they're on the fence, I just kind of want to go ahead and kind of give them a little bit of backstory, and then kind of we'll take it to the next level, to everything that's kind of coming down the road later on.
Yeah. Well, it starts with, at the time that I launched it, I was a solo operator. I was doing the consulting. I didn't have anybody else I was working with. And it became apparent that the challenges that my clients were having were really outside my skill set. And so I thought, I really need to reach a higher level of education, of development than I'm capable of doing. So I reached out to Kent State University, major university in Ohio, and met with they have a very well-developed executive and management development program for large industries. So I reached out to them thinking that while my clients may not have, or small businesses in general, couldn't afford to hire in that caliber of talent, if we got a bunch of them together and shared the expense, we could afford it. So I reached out to Kent State, met with the director of that program. She's still the director of the program, and convinced them that it would be a good idea to partner with this very small consultancy and put together an executive development program, which is what the summit has become. And that was I met with them in 2004. Our first one was 2005. So this is our 16th year.
And how many people have you had come through the program? You said it earlier. It's quite a few.
Yeah, we're figuring it's around 1,600. Again, as you can imagine, KT wants to give me an exact number, and I said, look, I'm just looking. Put it on the green. That's all I'm after. I don't need to put it in the cup. So.
Needless to say, quite a few people have come through the program. Yeah. In those years. And also there's a whole graduation process that takes place, which we participated today. Yeah. So just talk to us about that. Once, how does that work to actually graduate?
Well, the way that it works is we broke the program into 4 different areas, disciplined areas. And as you attend, if you want to graduate, you have to have at least one course in each of those buckets. Those buckets are...
Which, by the way, it's not like, oh, I'm going to get into this thing because I have to graduate. No. If you just want to pop your head in for a year, it's totally up to you, and you will get... It's not fluffy classroom work. It's real, actionable go home, start implementing, which is all, which is anybody who listens to the show knows that that's what I'm about. So I don't want them to say, oh, well, I have to graduate? What is this, is an entire program? No. But if you choose to, which you probably will, you come back 4 years, right?
Yep.
4 years in a row.
Yep.
Right.
Well, it doesn't have to be in a row.
Oh, 4 years.
You have to
total.
have 4 years
Right.
in order to do the 8 courses.
Right.
So you have one course in each of the disciplines, HR, leadership, sales and marketing, and finance. And so you take one course in each of those, and then you can take 4 electives.
Right.
And so when you do that, regardless of how long it takes, then you get a diploma from Kent State University and Violand Management. Which is amazing.
I feel like that
That's
means
pretty
that you have 7 courses you're really going to like over the years and one that you need to graduate.
Exactly.
That makes your
That-
eyes roll back into your head. That was me in finance in 2019. I was like, oh my God.
Don't make it hurt. Don't make it hurt. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Michelle, I think that might have been my class that you were in.
I don't remember who it was, maybe. I don't think so.
100%. So there's obviously a lot of things in the works. These events are absolutely amazing, just super high caliber, instructors. What's next? Because you kind of gave us a little bit of a preview, but I want you to kind of go ahead and share it with the world.
Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tim because he's the one that's going to talk about the next big thing that we're going to bring out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rico. So for the first time, we're gonna roll out a system that we designed to help small business owners that are in the direct labor trades solve the biggest problem facing them right now, which is how to find and retain people. The direct labor pool that's out there is thin, it's no secret, and we spent the better part of a year and a half designing a system that identifies 13 areas in any business that have an impact on that company's ability to attract and retain employees. So we not only put that system together on paper, but we also spent quite a few months here with a software developer, put that online that has a series of assessments that you take that give you recommendations that are unique to your organization when you work through that Culture Forge system online. So we're going to have a workshop tomorrow for the morning, and our goal by the end of that workshop is to make sure that each of those companies walk out of that workshop with a written, documented plan for how they're going to improve their company's ability to attract and retain top talent moving forward.
What are some of those, you don't have to name all of them, but what are some of those 13 areas that you're talking about?
Yeah, so some of the more obvious ones are obviously the things like your pay and your wage. Could be things like employee development. Could also be things like your culture and how that has an impact on how future employees view your organization or current employees view your organization from a standpoint of longevity. But some of the less obvious ones are things like owner impact. So what impact does the owner have on your company's ability to attract and retain?
You're telling me that an owner has an impact?
That's amazing.
Believe it or not.
Who would have thought
believe it
that?
or not. But other things like trade promotion, which is going to be, I feel personally, a big influencing factor on any of the trades' ability to attract and retain employees moving forward. I think as a society and as a country, we need to do a better job of promoting careers within the trades and not just pushing kids to go to college.
Right.
Because there's real work, there's real good work out there for a segment of the population that's really, quite honestly, needed.
Yeah, 100%. Right. So and that's kind of like been, again, we do a lot of podcasts. We're talking to a lot of people. And it's always like, hey, how do I find good labor? How do I find good labor? What am I doing? And a lot of times these are really good companies that have a really good owner and they have a really good culture and they're still struggling. Right. Yeah. And a lot of this is, due to, again, technology. We've spoken about this where I think personally technology to some degree is affecting how the workforce is even entering the market because they're like, well, if I can make X amount of dollars here or I can do that from a beach in Tahiti, then I'm going to probably do that, which of course isn't always the case. If not, everybody would be on a beach in Tahiti, right? But that marketing message is what's being pushed on, let's call it the young folk. Right. Yeah. So like, how does a company, compete with that from a culture standpoint? Right. So how do we take existing culture and make it to where they're total cheerleaders and they become like your best recruiters?
Yeah. So a good question. And I think I don't think you'll ever be able to compete with the gig jobs that are out there or the people that desire the ability to work remotely on a beach in Tahiti. Right. I would personally love that myself, but
yet here we are.
Yeah, here we are, right? But I think you also have to take a look at the purposefulness of employment too. So it's not just about what you're doing, but it's how you're doing it and why you're doing it. And we're seeing the younger generations want more meaningfulness out of what they're doing from a work standpoint. And quite honestly, the restoration industry has got a lot to offer those folks.
Chuck, let me ask you a question. How much has this changed, like, over the years? Because you've seen quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
You've seen ups in the market, downs in the market. You've seen good economies, bad economies. How big of an issue is it today as opposed to, back in the quote unquote good old days, whenever that might be, right?
I remember the good old days. I think there's been a monumental shift in a lot of ways. In the first place, years ago in this industry, there were more workers than there were jobs. And so it automatically gave business owners and small business owners in particular a pass on creating an environment that's inviting to people. You didn't have to. People needed a job. People don't need a job now. People don't work because they have to. They work because they want to now. And so if you want to attract any employee, you need to create a place, a culture, whatever you want to call it, that's inviting to people, not only to get them in the door, to keep them in the door. And that was the approach, quite frankly, that we took to the system that we wrote, was we can't change the gig economy. We can't change the unemployment rate. We can't change any of that stuff. What we can change is our culture. That's what we can control.
Do you see any VMA clients that are really rock stars sorry, not to play favorites, not to make you play favorites, but I know you have some speakers tomorrow too that are from some of your clients and some of the companies you work with.
It'd be great on the podcast as he answers this, we just bleep out the names. Bleep. Oh, absolutely. Our favorites are bleep, bleep.
Anybody who stands out.
It's like asking who your favorite child is.
It is.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Michelle, obviously we've got great examples, not just in recent times, but over the years, 30-some years of doing this and working with clients. You notice certain elements of businesses that do things that are unique to them and make them uniquely attractive to the types of employees that they want. And quite honestly, that's what the Culture Forge system was built on, was the lessons that we've learned from those clients over those years. It's not just all original VMA stuff. We have very privileged seats in being able to view what our clients do, and thinking of some of them, it could be the types of offices that they employ, the type of working conditions that they promote, even to the way they dress or the things that they do. There's a lot of things that go into it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's something really important to highlight, and I think that this translates, or at least trickles down to people that would participate in like these type of courses and trying to get the information to better themselves and better their company. Is you said, well, we can't change the gig economy. We can't change this, so we've got to do something. Yeah. And then you create a program, in which case, if we kind of apply the same principle, the same way of thinking to the business owner, it's like, well, most of us are just sitting around, at the end of the workday, and we're like, oh my God, all these workers suck, or this, that, I just can't find anybody, right? Whereas that same kind of mindset can apply. It's like, hey, wait, we can't change this stuff, but what we could change is how we approach the hiring process, how we approach, company culture and whatnot, right?
Absolutely. Just a short while ago, I had a conversation with a business owner who was bemoaning the fact that he had turned over 30 people in his organization. Not a big organization, but he had turned over 30 people in his organization in the last year, and it was always them. It was their fault. They were knuckleheads, all this kind of stuff. And I looked at him and I said, have you ever considered the role that you might have played in that turnover?
Right.
And it was like he had never considered that.
Right.
And I thought, okay, well, there's a starting point.
Right. What is the common denominator
yeah,
here?
Exactly right. That's the whole thing.
I thought Leighton made a really good point when we were talking to him at Access with the research that they did with the industry workforce. And he talked about this is the loneliest generation. The youngest generation coming into the workforce is the loneliest that there ever has been because they don't have a church community. Maybe they don't have clubs that they belong to like they did. All of the, there's so many reasons that they're disconnected. And it's not the same connecting to somebody over Facebook or Zoom even or texting or whatever. So that presents a huge opportunity for companies to create that family environment. And I think for a while, our industry, I think some companies have veered away from that family mentality, right? No, we're a team. We're not a family, we're a team. We got to be careful here. But I think a lot of people are looking for that family, like that camaraderie, feeling like they belong, because I think younger generations are missing that belonging feeling.
Michelle, I'm sure you've heard that comment even here at the summit. We didn't have the summit for 2 years because of COVID, and people down here are just talking about it is so good to be back together. Zoom is fine; it has its place. There's nothing like being there in person and connecting.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that you're kind of driving the point home about family too. Is like, as an entrepreneur, you got to find ways to facilitate working at your establishment. So interview with Tom Gisler, he highlighted how one of the things that he did was he facilitated daycares and childcare and stuff like that. Kind of out of the box thinking, but these are things that
That's huge.
Huge. I mean, Shelly's like, and
Huge.
she's by the way, she's behind the scenes as per usual, telling me to put the mic closer to my mouth. Anyways, so we've said it doesn't make sense. Like, if she had to go to the workforce today and get a quote unquote regular job, like, it would never in the world make sense, right? So when you're forced to kind of make that decision, well, let's just assume, person A is such an amazing employee. They would be loyal. They would be this, they would be that. But because of the cost of living and, they just can't do it, they're like, you know what? It's not even worth it.
Yeah.
But now as an entrepreneur, if you could say, hey, this is a little bit more of a stretch that I have to do as a business owner, but I can attract now these people that I know have the willingness to work and they have a reason to work.
Correct.
Right? Which is kind of a added bonus. And then you create that family environment, because now even if I pitch you on an extra $1 or $2, you're going to be like, no, I'm not going anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
What am I going to give up?
What am I going to give up for an extra $1 or $2?
Right.
I'm curious, you were talking about everybody's super excited to be back at the summit. What are some of the lessons over the years that you've learned? I know that you guys really look at your feedback and really use that to determine courses and how things are evolving. And I know courses have changed even just in the last 6 or 7 years that I've been coming in the content. So how do you keep it moving forward, make sure you're fresh and staying on top of trends and keep learning?
I think Tim spoke to it earlier when he said that we have a very privileged seat at our clients' tables, and peeking behind the curtain. And as a result, on a daily basis, we deal with the real world issues that they're dealing with. Okay, that gives us a lot of insights into, what do we want to present on here? That's a starting point. But I also think just the trends that you look at. Years ago, culture would not have been culture wasn't a part of the curriculum here at the summit. Now it's a huge part of the curriculum at the summit because it's so critical.
My first class was managing the generations with Amy Shannon.
But
that was a huge topic when I first joined the industry. There were keynotes on it all the time, and now that's not really something that you talk about so much anymore. A little bit about generations, but not in the same manner. Where it's like, how do you relate together and work them together? That's past.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so as Chuck said, when we work with clients as closely as we do, and our volume of clients has increased over the years, the plethora of ideas just flows every day, every week, every month. And not that you want to act on every single issue that every company has, but we start to identify trends. So we can notice when the generational gap is no longer much of an issue. However, there are certain other things that do rise to the top. So then we seek out experts in those areas and ask them to put together a curriculum, and we end up with a class.
So from you guys' seat, and it may be difficult to identify or not, do you feel that the industry as a whole has enough of the owners and upper management that are seeking this kind of education, this kind of training, this kind of betterment? Or do you just feel that we're just starting to barely scratch the surface and getting as many restoration contractors involved? In other words, getting them from a tech mindset to an entrepreneur, real business owner, I am building something for myself, my family, and my community mindset.
I don't think there's any secret that most of the training in the industry up to this point has been focused on the technical elements of a business, and typically in the field stuff. I do feel that there's a growing awareness of the need for executive development, for management development in the industry, which is great for us. So I think that is coming. It's still not here yet. There's still a huge gap that needs to be filled.
So because of this cultural, and the age gaps and the new people with new ideas, do you see that the newer generations that are coming into the business, that they're a little bit more attuned to company culture and getting the right facts and the right data? Do you see that being more important now than years past?
Absolutely. And the reason being is because in recent years we've gone through a lot of consolidation in the industry, and when you have a consolidated industry, you have larger entities that come into play here. So a lot of the things that were, like you said, reserved for larger enterprise size organizations are now starting to come down. The element to it is, for a lot of years, the smaller businesses, particularly in the trades, were focused on buying the owner a job. He needed a paycheck, and there wasn't a real exit strategy, or kind of an end game even. But now we're starting to see real exit strategies or plans come to full fruition. These business owners are realizing, hey, I can have a legitimate saleable asset on my hands if I embrace some of those ideas that were previously reserved for enterprise organizations.
What direction do you feel consolidation's going? I know we're heading down a rabbit hole here, and we don't have to go way down it, but I ask
that's
this
another
frequently
podcast,
because it is a whole different podcast. But the industry has changed and shifted, and that continues to change. And so there are a couple big players at the top, but eventually everyone's been approached. Like the bigger companies, everyone's been approached about 12,000 times. I don't know.
Personally, I think this is an opportunity. Now, again, I'm a little bit of a contrarian, but I do believe that this is a huge opportunity. And I'll open that up a little bit more, but definitely let's go ahead and get your feedback on it.
Yeah, Tim, you want to go first?
Well, I mean, opportunity is all relative to the audience you're speaking to, right? I obviously think there's opportunity for those who want to sell in a consolidated market, but a lot of the consolidation and the mergers and acquisitions that we've been seeing have been driven by the economy. Where the cost to borrow money is at the moment, and it's still relatively cheap, even though interest rates have doubled over the recent weeks. It's still relatively cheap in the grand scheme of things. So I think you're going to see the transactions accelerate maybe for the rest of this year, and then I think you're going to see it start to cool down a little bit. Not that there won't be any less interest in buying, but I don't think the rush to do the buying is going to be as great as what it used to be.
What are your thoughts?
I think that there's opportunity, a big opportunity. I think one of the things that's changed isn't just the size of the company. I think the game changed. When you start bringing big money into an industry, when you start bringing intellectual acumen, into an industry, it raises the tide. Now, either you're going to agree to rise with it or you're going to sink, one of the two. So, but I also have infinite confidence in the American spirit, in the entrepreneurial spirit. I think there's always going to be room for the small business owner, for the entrepreneurs. Do I think that's going to change? Yes. Do they have to compete differently? Yes. Numbers matter. And now businesses are being run by people who care about the numbers. If you're going to compete and succeed, the entrepreneur, the small business guy who didn't pay attention to the numbers before or how to run a business, they're not going to be around.
Right.
That's going to be a competitive, that's going to be table stakes.
Right. And in there is where I think the opportunity really lies. Like when we have, situations like this where you do have, big money coming into the industry and you have smaller companies being eaten up, well, you got a decision to make. And it's either you die, right? And that's it. Okay, it was a fun ride, call it a day. Or you take that opportunity to go ahead and start doing things that you probably should have done 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago. You clean up, and now you start potentially, you attend more of the Violand stuff, the VMAs, and you get the education that you need. And then all of a sudden now you start saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I should have done this, X amount of time ago. Now is a good time. Let's go ahead and now, start putting together an exit strategy. Even if you never sell, just the opportunity to look at something that you have and say, I could sell this if I wanted to. It's
that's
attractive.
The thing.
That's a huge win.
Yeah.
That's a good point right there that you make, Rico. And one of the things I think a lot of small business owners need to recognize is that the investment that they're making in training and education and experience for their employees become an asset of the sale. Yeah. And the more trained and more experienced staff that you have, the more valuable your organization is.
Absolutely.
There's no question. And the other part of that is, to your point about I should do this stuff now, whether or not I want to sell, half of the value of developing your people and running a business like a business is to have fun doing it while you're running. It doesn't have to hurt.
Right.
It should be fun.
Right.
At one point when you started it was fun. And so it should continue to be fun.
And one last thing on this, for those companies that are out there, like I'm a smaller independent restoration owner, right? Mm-hmm. And I have friends and colleagues that are in my same boat, right? That same, revenue range. Some of them are extremely concerned, saying, well, it's all going to be big box, right? It's all going to be the franchises and it's all going to be big box and we're just going to be pushed out. For me, I'm like, I don't necessarily think so, right? Like, there's always an area, a demographic that says they don't want to go to a big box store. They want to go to a mom and pop shop, right?
Yep.
Should they be worried or not?
They should be worried if they're not willing to change.
Right.
If they're willing to change and be creative about how to truly run a business and create a differentiator for themselves, find their niche where they can excel and compete with the big boys. There are things that the big boys cannot do. Find those things and do them. Do them very well, and you'll be very successful.
So what are your thoughts?
That was the exact question I was going to ask. So that was the exact, seriously was the direction I was going to take it. How do you recommend? Because you have to have a lot of clients that come to you like, my competitor just went blue. Now what do? I'm worried. Like, they're big now and have all this money behind them and a big company that knows what they're doing. So what do I do? What's like I guess, is that probably the number one thing you tell them is let's find your differentiator and make sure you're staying on course?
Well, there's more than just differentiation, but there's also specialization. So get good at doing something. You can't be good at everything, but get good at something.
Are you finding more and more your clients are trying to find kind of that niche client base, or are they, because there's full service companies obviously, but there are some now that are like, we're going for the high net worth client, or we're focusing on institutions, or we're focusing on education, like choosing more of a focus? Are you finding more of that?
Absolutely.
What was that last statement? That more companies are going for higher net worth clients?
Which is
Yeah.
specialization.
The specialization, right, and as opposed to...
I think there's more, and I've seen more and more specialization too as I'm talking to companies and
Right.
seeing that that's what they're using to try to kind of differentiate themselves and really find a niche. And then they can focus on those relationships in that niche, right? Instead of trying to
100%.
relate to everybody around them and serve everybody. It's like, let's figure out what we're really good at and let's focus on that.
Well, right, yeah. I mean, have you seen that quite a bit?
Absolutely, and I think that, yes, absolutely. I think the other thing that you want to avoid when you're a smaller player and you have no interest in being a big box is don't try to be the big box, okay? Be you.
Right.
And, find the specialization, find what it is that you're best at, and be exceptional at that.
Right. And I think being strategic, and again, when people hear from the outside in and they hear those kind of comments, they're like, oh, okay, great, then I'm just going to be me. But there still needs to be a strategy there.
Oh, absolutely.
To find out
Yeah.
what that thing is for you, right?
Well, I
because
didn't say that wasn't easy. I
Right,
didn't say it was easy.
right. But I just want to clarify that, right? Because again, there's someone that could potentially watch this or listen to it and be like, oh, okay, great. Well, you know what? I'm just going to pick one, and let's just use fire as an example. I'm going to do fire, and that's it, right? Where that was like your biggest loser, your lowest profit margin, should have probably just stuck with like water. Figuring out, like looking at your data, looking at your numbers, and then figuring out what that right move is.
Sure, I could be me.
Right.
And part of me is showing up late. Part of me is not paying attention to numbers. Part of me is not marketing. No, that's not what we're talking about here.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe the real answer there isn't just fire, right? But it's maybe a chemical fire in an industrial facility.
Mm-hmm.
Those are types of specialization that's a derivative of what we do all day, every day
Right.
already. Just pick a specific niche. And even if you're not, that's not all you're going to do, but you're going to get residual related work with that specialization as well. So it'll all be in the same funnel.
That's amazing. Awesome. So just to wrap it up, Chuck Violand, Tim Hall, Violand Management, Michelle Blevins. So just to wrap it up, if people want to go ahead and get more information on additional resources for some of the courses and the executive summit, building culture, and all of this good stuff, you guys have so many things that you have coming down the pike. Where should people go and kind of keep their finger on the pulse of what's up with Violand?
Violand.com.
He's like,
Wow,
very
that was
simple.
a simple answer. I want to ask one more question because we talked about, and hopefully this will wrap it well. We've talked about how you help your clients move forward, but I know Violand always has a vision. You've added some new advisors and stuff over the last few years, and you've had some big growth. So I want to know what Violand's vision is in the next.
Michelle, I am so good at looking behind other people's curtains. I just really struggle with pulling the kimono back at Violand Management. So.
None of us believe that. You wrote a book on how to do it, so.
No, we have great plans. Obviously we're in a transition phase right now, and we've been in that transition phase for several years. I think it's finally becoming visible in terms of transitioning management of the company and ownership of the company ultimately And that's where we are. So we're not going away. At least that's not the plan, is to go away. Actually, quite frankly, our vision is to continue beyond Chuck Violand for several generations. You know, we have an obligation. So.
Amen.
Yes,
Anything
love
else
it.
on that?
No, thanks for letting me join you on your podcast.
It
was a thrill.
It's so much fun. We're going to chop it up, and then I'm going to send you a bunch of stuff, and then you're eventually going to use it. It's going to be great. It's going to be fun.
It's going to be great. I'm here for it.
So Restoration Domination, there you go, live from, where are we? Canton? This is Canton. Canton, Ohio. Kent University, Violand Management, CNR Magazine, and Restoration Domination, a little collab. That's what it's all about. Remember, guys, go out there, hustle, hack, dominate. Let's go.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, interviewing the restoration business's top industry insiders, the movers and shakers, the hustlers and hackers. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. Hook up with us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Restoration Domination to catch video interviews, highlights, and behind-the-scenes content. And follow your host at Rico Garcia Jr. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.